Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Come into the room. Come into the room. We are so excited to see you here on this Friday as we talk about early childhood systems of care. And this is truly a community that we have going on, y'all. This is our third session and our final session, but I'm so excited to have all of y'all here. Before we get started, out of transparency, I want to share that we partner with SAMHSA. We are funded by SAMHSA. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that the viewpoints shared today are fully representative of SAMHSA. And in the event that the technology if Zoom decides to Zoom, if we have any breaches, we'll make sure that we end our webinar immediately and we'll send you all the new link. And just to share, we had some tech issues earlier, so we're hoping that folks are able to come in without any glitches. All the folks on the screen, these are our amazing thought partners that help us do the work that we do at the National Training and Technical Assistance Center. So I'm just so humbled and excited to share space, not with just y'all, but also the folks on the screen so that we can continue to do the good work. So when we think about our vision and our services at Intact and our goal merely is to close opportunity gaps, right? Through individual consultation, peer learning exchanges, coaching opportunities, training academies, really cultivating a space for communities of practice, digestible reads, podcasts, and much more. So our goal is not only to stand in the gap, but close these opportunity gaps that we continue to experience in system of care work. So take a moment right now, and I want you to scan this QR code because we have our call for proposals out. We have our virtual summit coming up in 2025, and we want to hear from you. I've really been paying attention to the survey data after each call that we've had, and folks want to hear more about early childhood systems of care. Folks have been saying we want more of this. We don't really talk about this. Systems of care is really anchored in youth and adolescents. So we want to hear from you and your regions, your territories, your states, whatever programs that you are operating out of. And we'll show this slide again at the end of our time today. So some commonly asked questions, you all will receive a certificate of completion after the event. The presentation will also be shared, and this event is being recorded for folks that perhaps register and can't make the call today. So you will have access to that. And we're working on creating this really nice learning capture for you all. So we don't want to just come over here and talk about systems of care and all the things that we know. We want to leave you all with resources to use the next day in your programs, your regions, your states, and your territories. So I'm Lisa Knight. I am a research instructor, Georgetown University, but also a parent advocate. And I'm a parent advocate before anything, and just excited to share this space with y'all. I've been in early childhood education for 18 years, and I've kind of been all over the place doing training technical assistance. I have Head Start experience, Part C, early step experience, speech path. So I'm excited to be able to have these conversations with y'all and really talk about what's next. And so I'm going to allow Melissa to introduce herself. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Melissa. Tell the folks who you are.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Melissa Burnett, and I am a family and community engagement supervisor with Lutheran Services Florida Head Start Early Head Start program. I have been working with Head Start for over 22 years. So I have seen a lot, I have grown a lot, and Head Start and systems of care keeps evolving. So that's who I am.
Well,
Definitely
welcome.
a family advocate. I advocate for every family that comes through those doors that need our services.
And I appreciate you joining us. So for the folks that joined us the whole series or new today, Melissa joined us on our very first conversation, and now she's joined us for our last conversation, because what better way to start with the bang? We're still keeping strong and end with the bang as we talk about trauma-informed care, equity, and all things systems of care in early childhood. And so today, that's exactly what our plan is, really talking about ways to increase our understanding of trauma and what it looks like for infants and young children. We're going to be talking about systems of care in early childhood, but also looking at strategies to help us navigate these same systems that we're in, but then what does it look like in our own individual communities that we serve? So I always want to know who's in the room. So in the chat, tell us what role you have in your program, and then what state, region, or territory do you live in? I literally look at all of the data after these workshops. I want to know who I'm talking to. I want to know ways that we can network, ways that we can stay in touch. So in the chat, tell us who you are. And we're going to have open discussion later. So this is another reason why I want to know who's here. Welcome, Utah, North Carolina, New York. Rita, I want to go to New York so bad, just for a day, go to Broadway and do all the things. Okay. All right. Hey, Kathy. Kathy, you have been here all 3 sessions and I appreciate you. Massachusetts, Seattle. I love it. I love it. Los Angeles. Oh my gosh. Connecticut. We got some folks in the house and I love that. Texas, I'll be in Dallas, Texas, presenting in a couple of weeks. New Jersey. All right, I love it. This Oregon. We got a lot of folks in the room from all over. And so this is what this community is about. Making sure that we're utilizing this space to network, making sure that we keep it a safe space, and that we're having these conversations of now we have this information, but now what? So before all the things, I used to train and coach teachers on the pyramid model framework. And so folks that know the pyramid model framework, we really promote social and emotional competence. It's an evidence-based framework. And anyway, in that, the focus is making sure that we're teaching young children about how they feel. But I truly feel like we can't do this work without checking our own selves. So in the chat, tell me how you feel. Are you a 1, a 2, a 3? Are you all of the above? Because right before y'all logged on, I think we were at a 3, right, Melissa? Because of Zoom.
Yes, definitely.
And then Joanne got me at a 2, and then now I'm at a 1. All right. And Dr. Walter Gilliam, y'all, I'll share, is one of my favorite researchers, and I've shared this every session we've shared together. He led a groundbreaking case study in 2005 about preschool expulsion, and his research showed that Black children, particularly Black boys, are suspended and expelled at greater rates than any other ethnicity. But he also anchors a lot of research around staff wellness and the work that we do in systems of care, and shared recently that we can't talk about the health and well-being of young children without talking about the health and well-being of those who care for young children. So I see a lot of 1s and 2s in the chat. Okay, Kaylin, 1.5, I understand, okay? Because I sometimes I'm a 1.5, and sometimes, okay, Lay said that they're all of the above. Rita's at a 3, and listen, I told you I was there earlier. So I appreciate y'all checking in, letting us know how you feel, and we're so hopeful. Okay, Shavandra, I totally understand. Hopefully, as we get through the conversation, that we're all at a 1, and that we just have ideas about what to do next. But let's center ourselves, take a deep breath, and we're gonna journey together. So before we get into the journey, as we talk about systems of care work, I want you all to journey with me as I share my experience being a part of the same system that tried to thrust out my son, right? So when we talk about systems of care work, I think it's important to note that yes, this work is important. Yes, we're doing this work, but we're also impacted. It's a level of humanness that we all share. So come journey with me and my son. I never thought that my journey advocating for my son would bring me to this platform, but here I am, and I'm very grateful to be in this shared space. My name is Lisa, and my son is Christopher Jr., also known as CJ. Our story is about preschool suspensions and expulsions within our education system and parent advocacy. I share my story with you as both a parent and also a doctoral candidate researching this very topic. My son was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also so sorry. What just happened? Okay. ADHD. And while this was helpful, it was just the tip of the iceberg. I wanted to dig deeper and go beyond the diagnosis. The reality is that preschool expulsion isn't a problem solely linked to a child's behavior. It's directly linked to racism, bias, school policies, and staff burnout. So, in what ways do we see the whole child and consider the system and adults surrounding our children? At 9 months old, CJ attended a privately owned family childcare home, and by the age of 2, he was labeled a bully. His dad and I made the tough decision to withdraw him and move him to a high quality center based preschool. The first year was pretty good until the behavior calls occurred daily. I had no idea what this ride would be like, but it sure felt bumpy, frightening, and exhausting. As the calls continued, the school had ideas of what they thought was happening with CJ, whether it was potential speech and hearing loss because he didn't listen, benign seizures because he daydreamed, or developmental delays. And all of these presumptions were linked to his behavior. I followed up on every suggestion, but he passed every evaluation. As a parent, I grappled with the next phase in our journey because I was sitting in denial and fear. I remember the day like yesterday. We were at the soccer field. The coaches were giving clear instructions to the team, and CJ was prancing around like a teenage mutant ninja turtle. He struggled to focus and stand still. He was in his own little world, happy as can be. After the soccer game, we went to a local grocery store and I met a mom with her son who displayed similar characteristics as CJ. After an hour-long conversation, she recommended her neurologist. I made the appointment and he was evaluated. Soon after, CJ was diagnosed with ADHD. The diagnosis gave us answers and opened my eyes. I learned how to advocate by asking hard questions regarding bottom line policies and equity. According to the Office of Civil Rights data, boys are disproportionately disciplined the most, but Black boys are suspended and expelled 3 times more than their peers. When people ask me, what's the solution to end preschool suspension and expulsion? You know, it's such a multifaceted answer with more than one solution. I'd start with awareness, building capacity within our education systems, and the other piece is advocacy, making sure that we're advocating for our preschoolers and their families, normalizing feeling seen, heard, and a sense of belonging. That's our amazing crew that helped bring my story to the screen. And my son is now 13 in 8th grade, and I'm still advocating, y'all. I'm still advocating. I'm still asking hard questions. I'm still challenging discipline policies. And so when we think about it beginning in early childhood education and we look at really systems of care work and the work around youth, it carries on. And so this work that we do is so critical, it's so important. So I'm hopeful that this story has inspired you all and give you some type of wondering. What's something I can pull away from it? What's one thing I can do with the work that I do? What can I take away from this experience that's shared with so many other folks across the country? So thank you for journeying with me on that video. A lot of folks wanted to know about the video, so we'll make sure we share it after our webinar. But we will be talking about trauma today, and just like we did our feelings check-in earlier, I want folks just to check in with yourself, how you're feeling. If you have to come off screen, take a deep breath. If stuff comes up for you, I totally respect that because this is a safe space and we want to hear from you today. So I always want to make sure that we're on the same page and when we define trauma and talk about it. And I'm sure we are, but I like to just start here. And so trauma happens when frightening events happen, but it's difficult for us to cope with these things happening. It could be a water crisis, domestic violence, divorce, death of a pet, death of a loved one, death of a friend, homelessness. Did I say incarceration? Preschool expulsion, right? That's a form of trauma because you're pushed to different classrooms every day because you know the teacher doesn't like you. So trauma shows up in so many different ways and it looks different in young children. So gone are the days where we start off with what's wrong with this child and really moving into what happened or what's happening to this child and this family. When we think about trauma and young children, why do we need to talk about both, right? Because I feel like you can't talk about one without the other. And so when we think about preschool expulsion, the preschool to prison pipeline, systems of care work, it all starts in infant and early childhood, the work that we're doing. But we have to recognize too the impact that trauma has on the brain because it's developing so rapidly. But what does that look like in the classroom? What does that look like in the family dynamic, the family structure? And so we always want to make sure that this is really at the forefront of the work that we do, understanding the impact of trauma on the developing brain and how it impacts young children and family. And two, how do we individualize the services that we offer and support to close that gap, right? So speaking of closing gaps, when we talk about systems of care work, by definition, it's community-based, right? Supporting children and youth that are at risk for mental health issues. It is a coordinated network, meaning that we cannot do this work by ourselves in silos. Meaningful partnerships are established, and we're making sure that we are culturally and linguistically responsive to the needs of the community that we serve. And our ultimate goal is to make sure that we're improving outcomes. We share the same core values and system of care: family driven, youth guided, strength and need based. What are the needs? What's happening? What's not happening? What are we missing? What are some things that we can explore that maybe hasn't come up yet? Our core values are anchored in being supportive, adaptive, and relational, making sure that there's a warm handoff when we're interfacing with families that could have just moved in state. Melissa talked about that at our first session, how a family had literally just moved in town a week and there was so much happening. And again, do we match the community? Are we able to communicate in a healthy way? If there are multiple home languages spoken in the community, do we have access and services to meet the needs of the folks that we are supporting? It needs to be a level of safety there. So we all share the same core values in system of care work. So in the chat, I want you to tell us what it looks like in your state, region, or territory. What does system of care look like? Are you in a Head Start program, family child care program, private preschool? Are you working at a school district? Are you in foster care? What is it? Are you a clinician? Are you a parent advocate? Tell us what it looks like in the work that you do. Parent coordinator. Thank you, Ashley. And I saw a lot of different things come up too when we did our intros, but just tell us, what does it look like? I know Melissa talked about systems of care in our first conversation in Head Start, as a family service supervisor and what that looks like. So tell us what it looks like in your area. Family advocate. Awesome. Thank you, Kylie. Yep, very important role. Very important. Anybody else want to share what systems of care looks like in your community? Care coordinator, awesome. Resource care, yep, awesome. High fidelity wraparound services. Brian, that's a big one. The wraparound services is huge when we're really talking about closing opportunity gaps. And we're going to get into that. Respite care, crisis nursery, Head Start program, charter school, food pantry. Rita, I think you came to the last session. So welcome back. All right. Case management. I love it. Policies. Thank you, Venetia. Absolutely love that. I'm not sure what CASA is. I would love to learn more about that. So it's a lot. Oh, Amy, I think you came last week. You're an infant and early childhood mental health consultant. Thank you for coming back. So we do a lot of different things across the country, y'all. And so this work is so important. And I've been really reading the conversations and the survey data that we want to have more. So our goal is to continue this conversation in our work around early childhood systems of care. And so I like to be transparent. We also share a lot of commonalities in systems of care, rooted in the same core values. We all have the same sustainability issues with staffing, governance. There could be a ton of things that we're all interfacing doing this work. But the interagency collaboration, is amazing when it's done to fidelity and it's done authentically and relationally. We all have a governance structure and systems of care work. And our work is individualized and in natural settings, because gone are the days where we're giving families all these places to go and all these folks to contact, where we're trying to close all of the gaps, right? And then we also have the mental health stigma that we're facing too. So it's a lot of different components that we're all experiencing across the country, and we're all actively thinking about what are ways that we can mitigate this? What are ways we can strengthen this in our systems? So our survey showed that y'all wanted more engagement. Our survey showed that we wanted open discussion. Folks wanted to share their experiences. Folks wanted to talk. And we want to listen. Okay. So what we're doing different today, I actually put some questions on the screen for folks to see. And I want you to raise your hand, come off mute. Yep, Kathy, your early interventions and professional development. I love it. And so I'm just going to ask the questions. You raise the hand and we want to hear you. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your experiences, your feedback, suggestions. So it says, how would you describe systems of care in early childhood with the focus on ensuring equity for all families? And not all at once. Y'all take your time, because we're all at a one. But we want to hear from you, because that's what the survey said. So tell us your thoughts. How would you describe it? Really anchored in equity for all families. Kathy says meeting them where they are, figuratively and emotionally. Absolutely. Anybody else want to share what that looks like? Okay. Whether in the chat or whether you want to come off mute, tell us, what challenges do families face when trying to access high quality, trauma-informed, and equitable services and supports? All right, Susan, let's hear what you got.
Not blaming the children or the family. You have to work with the families. I mean, I feel like when you just calling about behavior, a lot of times it's all not taking any the providers aren't taking responsible for their part when they're giving you this laundry list of everything. Because when you brought up expulsion, I taught preschool for like 20 years and I never once thought of expelling a child from my program. I just thought you just have to work together to make it happen, because preschool is such a learning age for parents. And as a preschool teacher, my job was to teach the children, but also to be supporting the parents in what they're trying to do with their child in the home.
I appreciate that, Susan, and I appreciate you for just pouring into our families and pouring into your program. And believe it or not, it is still happening today. I just did a webinar yesterday on the preschool to prison pipeline. So I just appreciate you focusing on building capacity, because that's exactly what it's about. So thank you for that, Susan. Venetia, let us know how you're feeling.
I'm all right. But I work for the Department of Children and Families in New Jersey, and I write policy for them. And what we speaking from, I guess, from the state level, not necessarily the locals level, families are facing, there's multiple things. They're facing language barriers. The knowledge for us, DCF, we send out the social workers. So the knowledge of the social workers themselves, because the older ones that's been for 20, 25 years are retiring. So the knowledge of the support and services in among the state are not known to the new workers that can tell these families that may have a language barrier, that are scared to even talk to DCF, because, that comes with the bad connotation already in itself, where New Jersey, we're trying to change that face. We're focused on the mental health. We're focused on the why your child may be acting out, why the school. And like you said, it's absolutely prevalent in schools. Staff burnout is real, very real, and it's detrimental. And I mean, there's only but so much DCF we can do, but that's some of the challenges these parents face. And with staff burnout, families can't communicate to the people in their schools. It doesn't help the situation at all. Thank you.
Yeah, Absolutely. No, thank you. Thank you. And I love how you landed on the why. Why does behavior happen? And I think that's so important because sometimes we only see the behavior and we don't see the child. We don't see that they slept in a car. We don't see that
Right,
the lights got turned out. We don't
right.
see that mom got beat up, that dad's incarcerated, grandma.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
We don't see what's under the iceberg. We just see a child and we see the behavior showing up and we don't even know where it's coming from. So I appreciate the work you're doing and really settling on what's the why and also building capacity. That's what Susan talked about. A lot of folks don't even really know coming into the
Absolutely.
field and they're learning. So
Right.
I just appreciate you sharing that and sharing the amazing things y'all are doing in Jersey. Thank you so much.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Um,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Ashley?
Thank you. I just wanted to touch on something that Venetia said was, and something that we talk about a lot is the lack of historical knowledge for providers right now. COVID took a huge hit to these services. In Massachusetts, wraparound services are through a program called CBHI. And during COVID, we saw that a lot of these long-term providers with the knowledge to help families left these practices, and now we have new social workers coming in who did not get the supervision or did not get the um, internships during COVID. And there's just a lot of lost knowledge, hindering these families from getting high quality trauma informed services. I don't have an answer, but it's definitely a huge problem.
And we may not have an answer, Ashley, but I appreciate you calling a thing, right? Because this is so common and it's almost one of those things that's happening, but we're not really labeling it. Folks are coming in the field and they're literally learning as they're going, right? And so if you don't have that reflective supervision space, if you don't have someone to really journey with you, and you have access to all sorts of scenarios that are actually practical, it's going to be gaps. And that margin is going to continue to just further widen. And so, going back to what Susan talked about, building capacity within the workforce, it is critical. So, I just appreciate you sharing that. Am I
Yes,
missing any other hands?
absolutely. If I can interject into that, absolutely, because I think a lot of times too, organizations are so needing to fill the position and not give adequate training to the folks who are going to be actually doing the work. So it's just like, okay, I have a body, let me put this body there. But however, even though you have a body there, but is the body good? You know, are they going to be able to deliver the services that the families or the child needs? Are they going to be able to deliver that? So I think a lot of times too that we fail, not only that person, but we fail as an organization when we do that, because no matter what the need is or how quick we feel that we need to get there, I think we have to slow down and provide adequate training for for the staff in order for them to be a to provide services for our families and for our children. And I think if we get back to that, even if we have to do some shadowing to ensure that these things are done.
Talk about call a thing. Is the body good, right? Gone are the days where we're putting bodies into this work that we're doing. These are real people, humans. These are real experiences, and we can't afford to just have a body in the room. We can't afford to have a body at the table. We really have to invest back into building capacity within our workforce. We really do. So I want to know, in your opinion, whether it's in the chat, whether y'all come off of mute, what sets service delivery apart from systems of care, especially when we think about the need for equity and trauma-informed practices. It's very similar to what we're talking about building capacity, really understanding the family need, but what sets it apart? And Melissa talked about this a little bit on our first conversation, but I want us to go a little bit deeper in regards to equity and those trauma-informed practices. We got a lot of things happening in the chat. I love this for us. Thank you, Maria. Training, education, and good assistance for all families. Yes, Margaret.
Right. Let me just
Absolutely.
say something here. when we're talking about what sets service delivery apart from systems of care, when we're talking about systems of care, we're giving families resources, we're giving them all of those things. But when we can have a successful service delivery, meaning that we have connected our families to the things that they need that will be able to, for them to be able to succeed, you know, connect them to the right resources. Because I can send a family to a food bank to get food, but did they get food? So we need to be following up. We need to have transparent conversations. We need to have follow-up conversations. And then now let's talk about the equity piece. Now we know that not all of our families are going to be treated equal. We know that. So we need to talk about it. We need to have these transparent conversations, because I do know for Head Start, everybody thinks because Head Start is free, is that, you know, that the families are just desperate, or that the families don't deserve the care that everybody else deserve. And that is so not true. We're all in this thing together. So just because I qualify for a Head Start, it doesn't mean that my services should be less than someone who's working and who may have private insurance to be able to connect them to the services. So I think for an organization, we have to have these conversations. We have to build these partnerships with other organizations to ensure that our families are being seen, not only seen, but being heard. You know, are we listening to what our families need? Because who's better to tell us what they need than the family themselves? We can't assume that just because a family is coming here, that they haven't been through domestic violence, that they have not been through, you know, being homeless, you know, that they have no food, you know, that they're running for their life and different things of that nature. So I think we have to, as organizations, we have to really listen to our families, communicate, and ensure that they're connected to all of the resources.
Yeah, and I heard a lot of you releasing the power struggle and what you just shared with us, Melissa. It's something about the role that we have. It does give us privilege and power, right? Because we're on the other end of the table, we're the
Right.
expert, but really the families are the expert. And if you look at the chat,
Absolutely.
folks are lighting up the chat about folks really knowing the work. And we talk about this all the time. Someone uplifted about infant and early childhood mental health consultants or therapists or specialists really going in and not really understanding consultation or understanding young children. And so when you really look at supporting young children and families, it is about building capacity. It is about exactly what you said, safety, making sure that families have what they need so they can better support their child. It is a comprehensive approach. And you're right, you have behavior specialists that are in programs that maybe they've been in education for 20 years, and now they got this position. It doesn't necessarily mean they understand the framework around the work that we're doing. So I appreciate you releasing the power struggle, because I heard you say, we don't know if they're running for their life.
No, we don't.
We don't. We don't. And I think I shared that in our first or second talk, where I was coaching a teacher, had my coaching agenda, and the teacher got off the bus. I didn't know she didn't have transportation. She was pregnant. Her first child's father had gotten murdered. The current child's father was incarcerated. She came and took off her sunglasses and had a black eye. You think we're finna start talking about some coaching goals? And she got real life stuff happening. That is really about putting our own agendas to the side, our own power that we hold, and really understanding what's happening with different people around the country and programs that we're serving. So I appreciate y'all in this chat and coming off. So Melissa, I have some questions I want to ask you, and thank you for sharing your input, even though it was for the team, but you know. But I want to ask you, Melissa, because data is very important with the work that we do. We can't just come to work and say, oh, I think this family might need this, or I think they might need that. And you talked about the data you use in the first conversation we had, but I want to know, What kind of data do you use to make decisions about improving systems of care? And then how do you ensure that it's creating trauma-informed and equitable services for every child in the family? Strictly talking about the data, and how do you make decisions based off of that with equity and trauma-informed practices?
Okay, and a lot of the work that we do, we use different tools that we can measure. I know for family services, we use our family outcome survey, which we're looking at the family in its whole. We're looking at where they live. Are they covered by insurance? What neighborhood they're living in. Is the neighborhood safe? So we're looking at that whole piece. Like what's their income level? How are they working? Are they, working full-time, part-time? And then we rate that. Are they thriving? They need help, or they're in trauma? So we look at that piece. In the educational aspect, we look at the teaching strategy goal. We look at the brigance, and the brigance would determine if a referral is needed due to a child that may have cognitive delays, social and emotional, which could be a possibility. Class, they look at the class assessment and determine the child teacher interactions. So we use a whole lot of data in order to assess not only the child, but also the family. We use Itters and Eckers. It helps with looking at a safe learning environment. Also it looks at developmental approach, appropriate activities, and it also look at the data for screening assessments and for cultural non-bias. And it also individualized and making sure that we're meeting the needs of our children and families.
Yeah.
So, and we take a look at that data, we share that data with the families, and then we also use that data to see if we need to refer the child out for, speech and language, or even developmental delays. And then we, refer those services, refer them out. Then the family and community engagement specialists, they meet with the families to go over the data to see exactly where the child is and what's determined the next steps.
And I appreciate you sharing that, Melissa. And I heard you talk about refer out, refer out. Data is so important because you know what data
Right.
will do? Data is going to show bias. Data is going to
Yeah.
show us patterns. Data is going to show that all the boys are being written up. Data is going to show us that this particular family service worker or this teacher doesn't like the family. Data is going to show us everything that we need, y'all. And that's what I love about data. If you're a pyramid model site on the call, we collect something called a BIR, a behavior incident report. And we collect demographic, Eric. We collect demographic information, ethnicity, race, all that stuff. You know why? Because we need to see if there's a pattern. Are we targeting certain demographics? Are we targeting boys? Are we targeting girls? Are we targeting multi-language learners? What does the data really show? So I just appreciate you sharing that, all the different assessments that are used to make informed decisions, not to push out, not to make enrollment contingency, but to say, are we being objective? Is there bias in the work that we're really doing? And data really uncovers a lot of that. That's why I love it so much. So when we talk about systems of care work and continuing the conversation with equity, how does trauma impact the development and the effectiveness of our systems of care work from your perspective?
Well, trauma, it impacts it a lot because even though we're doing all of these screenings for children, but if their family if they're experiencing trauma, of course, the child is a possibility is going to fail all those things that we have in place to, find out exactly, where the child is. How can we support the child? So a lot of times now what we have done, even though in our program, the children have to be screened within 45 days. And if we know that the family is experiencing trauma, after we talk, we encourage our educators to go back, rescreen the child to see exactly, where the child is at this point in time. And a lot of times we have to do that, whether they're experiencing, well, I won't say they're not experiencing trauma, because some of the children, this may be their first time in a child care setting. So that could be trauma for them because they're being separated from their families. So I know we always want to, like, let's hurry up, let's get it done. We have deadlines to meet. However, sometimes we have to slow it down and do what's best for the child. Because if you have a child who's coming in crying every day, what is your data going to say? What is it going to reveal if that child is going through all of that? They're not going to be able to do that. So sometimes we have to slow it down, back it up, and make the child feel comfortable, welcoming, and then move forward with your screenings. And I think a lot of times we're so caught up with meeting deadlines until we forget about the needs of our families.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yes.
It's a lot of programmatic pressure, grant deliverables, operating procedures. It's just a lot. It's a lot to sort through. And sometimes we get mixed in the shuffle. And I just appreciate you saying it's okay to slow down. Thank you,
Right.
Brian,
And
for
then,
sharing that.
right. And not only that, then it also will be able to help the teacher to see how we can support the teacher as well with, you know, with the child, how we can be supportive. So if the child is crying every day, then, we have our mental coaches to go in to see exactly what. A lot of times everyone wants to say it's the child, it's the child, it's the child, but it may be your classroom setup, or it just may not. The teacher and the child, we need to look at the child teacher interactions to see how we can best support the teacher as well.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that. Brian shared they use the SPARS. It's the SAMHSA Performance Accountability and Reporting System. So it's so important that we're aware of, because we talked about capacity, what our programs are using, and that we know what they really mean. Not that we just have it in place, but what does it actually mean, and what does it tell us once we collect all of our data. So now we're opening the floor back up, because remember, this is not just about me and Melissa, this is about us. So if you feel comfortable enough, come off camera, raise your hand, and we want to hear from you as we continue to talk about equity and trauma-informed care. And I want to know, in your opinion, your states, regions, and territories, who are the key agencies, services, community groups, and policymakers involved in building effective systems of care that are equitable and trauma-informed, both? Because you can't have one without the other, because it's countering, right? So I want to hear from you all. What does it look like in your region? All right, Benicia from New Jersey.
Hi again. So like I said, I work for Department of Children and Families. What we do, right now we have 46, I believe, don't quote me, children's system of cares contractors, and they go through an extensive. We have an Office of Research, Office of Monitoring, that they're constantly being monitored. And to see, and of course, we have to give them money. So we have to make sure where our money goes, it's working. And we make sure, like, they have to cover mental health, trauma-based. They have to have clinicians depending on the type of care. And it is very extensive of what they go through, what we have to put them through, being that, a lot of things are based on how we can decipher up this money for them. But yeah, it's different. I feel like it's like a 40-page sheet that is used and markers used to make sure it's applicable throughout the state, because we don't want to be sued as a state agency, one. So we want to be equitable amongst all races, amongst all people. It doesn't matter your immigrant status. It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't matter your color. It shouldn't matter your immigrant status. It shouldn't matter your political stance. It shouldn't matter at all. And that's how also we strive to write our policies to be inclusive. We also have a DEI department that makes sure our policies are reflective and equitable amongst everyone, just in case. But that's all. Thank you again.
That's all. That was a lot. And I love that, right? Because sometimes we might find systems where we're kind of reactive, but it really sounds like in New Jersey, y'all are really being preventative, right?
Now,
Like
now.
right now. And so then, so now y'all are like, hey, we recognize the pitfalls. We recognize the lessons learned. What are some ways as a state we can really strengthen our delivery and our systems of care approach? So I just appreciate you representing the state, but also those efforts that really seem like they're kind of baked in. It really seems like they're threaded in. And I just appreciate you just being an active community member today
Yeah,
and
no
sharing
problem.
your experiences. All right. Anyone else? Kathy said DEI, yes. And right, so some states don't find the need for this focus any longer. Florida. Kathy and I both are in Florida. So Kathy, I resonate with you, but I appreciate what's happening in Jersey around DEI, understanding the importance around it.
Side note, I'm from Florida too. I went to the University of Florida. I grew up in South Florida. Yes, I am a Floridian through and through still.
I love
All
it. I love it.
right.
I love it. I'm a USF Bull by heart. By heart, but I love it.
Okay, go ahead, but go Gators.
So, how do partnerships among these stakeholders help create better support systems? Like, what does all this look like when we talk about our communities of practice, when we talk about partnerships, memorandum of understandings, contracts? How do all these systems work to strengthen our system? Anybody want to share?
I can share.
Hello, come into the room.
Me, Pearson in Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm going to say that I think a lot of times the partnership have a lot of potential to provide the care, but somehow I feel folks still end up working in silos, which doesn't help families in general. So I think the partnerships are great and they're there, but we don't always utilize the power, the full power that can come from the partnerships to elevate health for families.
Tell me what you think is a barrier to utilizing the full power of partnerships, in your opinion. What's something holding us back from really utilizing the full power of it?
One big one, I think, is scarcity mindset. A lot of the partners are in nonprofit and government, and nonprofit in general, because funding support a lot of time is coming from the same person, the same philanthropy world for that community.
Mm-hmm.
People don't coordinate the work enough, because sometimes like, no, I'm doing this work, but really this partner would probably be best in doing this work. So maybe we should reorganize our expertise to this space, allow this partner to continue doing this so that we're not going after the same funding at that point. But I think sometimes we get attached to like, no, this is the services we're used to providing, even though we're in partnership with somebody who's doing it. And sometimes so we think there aren't enough families to serve. So we need to keep doing all the things that we're doing so we can serve all of the families, and there are enough families for all of us to serve all of them.
Yeah.
So I think at the root of it all, it's a scarcity mindset and maybe some lack of connections too, because I feel if we truly connected with one another and recognize the power that comes from the work that we're doing, it would alleviate some of the scarcity mindset that we operate with.
Oh, absolutely. I just appreciate you bringing that to light. I was in a meeting the other day, and we literally talked about how programs aren't talking to each other because everybody's competing for the same grant. So I'm not telling you what we do, and I'm not telling you what's working over here because I got to put that in my grant. So I just appreciate you for, in the spirit of calling a thing, recognizing some of the things holding us back. But more importantly, this is space for us to start thinking about how do we change that? How do we interrupt that cycle that we know that's existing? How do we keep bringing up things that are pushed to the side, right? So I just appreciate you sharing that. And so let's talk about exposure and equity. What are some preventative measures that can be put in place to promote equity and inclusion in early childhood settings? Kathy, your hand is up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when we hire diverse populations, we tend to care about diverse populations. I'd say that that's a great place to start. It was an accident that I put my hand up. I just wanted to react to the last speaker. She was doing. I agree with everything she said. I do think that the connections are sometimes lacking, and perhaps building those relationships and feeling comfortable with reaching out to others when we need that help. It's not always easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kathy. Venetia, is your hand up by accident or on purpose? Or you high-fiving me? Because I can do both.
No,
by high five.
I think mistake. I don't think I ever lowered it. Sorry.
Okay, because I was gonna high-five you. Annie, you got something? Annie, you
I-
got something else you
Mine
want
was
to
on
add?
purpose. Mine was on purpose.
Okay.
I think one of the big things I think that would curb expulsions and increase equity is having a social emotional curricula into the programs. And I say that because, I mean, not all of them are created equal, because, implementation of them to fidelity also matters. But I think when you have a social emotional program, especially in early childhood, I think we're forgetting that really that's what we should be focused on in the first 5 years of life, is how to build and have awesome relationships.
Mhm.
So when you have a social emotional program that can help the adult regulate, it's constantly building a self-awareness for the adult in the classroom and for administration, so that they can see some of these blind spots that elevate things that are not equitable.
I was trying to find the hearts to react to it. They turned off all my little fancy emojis, but I couldn't agree more, y'all. Because when we look at the juvenile justice system, when we look at the preschool to prison pipeline, there are things that happen very early in preschool that were ignored. There were many children, particularly children of color, that didn't feel safe, that didn't feel seen and heard, and then their parents probably also had suspension or expulsion experiences. So now we got big trust gaps, right? It is literally a cycle. So I appreciate you just talking about the curriculum. First, birth 0 to 5 is about emotions. That other stuff is gonna come. You want somebody that can read the alphabet by one. You want somebody to say, "I don't feel safe. I'm scared. I'm happy. I'm excited." Or what do we really want? And so I appreciate you sharing that, Annie. I'm a huge component and a champion and cheerleader for social emotional check-ins. That's why I asked y'all, were y'all 1, 2, or 3? Because it matters with the work that we're doing. So thank you for just sharing that, Annie. I appreciate that. Anybody else want to share their experiences before we go to the next slide? Because we got a couple more minutes left. Margaret.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I feel like where we are, we're just everybody is not on the same page with being trauma informed yet. Like
Mhm.
me and our director just had what we agreed was the worst meeting of our life, where we were treated with just like criticism and just absolute derision, I guess would be the right word for taking a trauma informed approach with the client. So like, and this is with a really close partner and a partner that serves a ton of families in our area.
Mhm.
So not to be negative, but like everybody is not on the same page yet.
No, and
Absolutely.
right. This is the spirit of calling a thing, right? And this is happening really, it's happening everywhere. I think it's a matter of us saying it's happening. And so how do we find a space that's safe enough to bring it to light, not in a punitive way, not in a judgmental way, but how do we bring it up to really start thinking about shifting our thoughts, shifting our way of work, shifting the way that we create policies. And folks have been doing things for so long and we haven't said much. And that's why it's kind of normalized. Melissa and I used to work at Head Start many years ago, and there were so many things happening that was systemic. And it was she and I trying to figure out, how do we disrupt this cycle? How do we do it in a way that we're following operational performance standards? Like, how do we do that? And so it's hard when you have to think outside the box. So I just appreciate you, Margaret, for calling a thing, because that's what we're doing in this space as we start thinking about what are things or one thing we can do different in the work we do? What can we say? What can we activate? What can we champion for? So I just
Lisa,
appreciate. Yes.
I wanted to jump in too. I think a lot of times too, when we're looking at expulsion and suspension, we're looking at, sometimes we have to look at it when they start altering the kiddos' schedule, saying, hey, you're here from, let's say, 8 to 12, then you have to be picked up. That's soft expulsion when you take a look, when you think about the whole thing. So who are we really, lack of a better word, punishing? With the kid for whatever reason. So we have to be able to come up with, how can we make this classroom a least restrictive environment that's going to fit the need of these children. We talk a lot of times about individualization. Well, now it's time to put it into play for
Thank you,
that
Melissa.
child.
Absolutely. Annie wanted us to go a little bit further on a soft expulsion. So y'all, a soft expulsion is, I'm going to go ahead and have Melissa come in at 10 a.m. because she can't come in before 10 a.m. Breakfast is too much for her. She struggles with transition, so she can't start her day to 10, but then she has to leave before lunchtime because it's just too much. She has difficulty sitting with her peers. She won't finish lunch. She bedwets during nap time. So then we have Melissa on a 2-hour school day. That soft expulsion is a gentle way to push out families because now the working family has to figure out, how do I let my boss know I got to pick my child up early? How do I let my boss know and keep my employment that, my kid is being sent home as soon as they get there? That's a soft expulsion. It's a strategic way that preschools around the country are pushing young children out. And so a lot of parents are literally operating in fear. So they're going to comply. They're going to comply because they are scared. And you know why? I was that parent. I was a parent that had to reduce schedule. I was a parent that got calls every day. And a hard expulsion is, we just aren't a good fit. Our policy says this, Lisa did that. We can recommend other preschools, but it's just not a good fit. We only have to give you 2 weeks. That's a hard expulsion. So we really talk about systems of care work. When we talked about building capacity earlier. It is literally understanding what preschool expulsion is, what trauma-informed care is, what systems of care work really is anchored in and rooted in. And then how do we stay in a wondering? What are we missing? What can we do to strengthen our approach? What are barriers and lessons that we learned along the way? And then what's one thing we can do to change, to activate change, and to interrupt things that wasn't in the best interest for the children and family that we serve? So we got 4 minutes left. This has been such a great conversation, y'all. I just appreciate all of y'all for engaging with us, coming off of mute, sharing your experiences. We're going to have to run this back and do it again, Melissa. What you think? I think we're going to do it again.
Absolutely.
We're just so excited. Just as a reminder, y'all will receive a certificate of completion after today. This is being recorded, so the presentation will be provided to you all. The video of me and CJ journeying through preschool expulsion will be provided. You'll get access to all these things, and please complete the survey because I literally read every comment. I go through the chat log because I want to make sure I captured it all, because that's going to help me be a better advocate, a better researcher. It's going to help me strengthen what I'm doing in this work. So I truly value being in community with y'all and learning from y'all. We have resources, so we want to make sure that we're staying in touch. Share all of that on the survey. What did we miss? What can we continue to talk about? What are some things that you want to hear about from our National Training Center? If you missed it earlier, we have our virtual summit coming up, and we want you in the room. We want you in the room attending and presenting. We want to know what's happening across the country, in your states, your travel areas, your regions, your programs, individually. We want to know the good work that you're doing. So please scan the QR code, visit our website so we can stay in touch. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I love LinkedIn. I'm always posting stuff on LinkedIn, y'all. And so we want to make sure that we're in touch with you all. Here's our contact information, email, phone, website. We have our flyer here. And if there are any TA needs that you may have, let us know. Let us know so we can see how we can support you and whatever needs you may have. Again, thankful for SAMHSA and our partnership. And this concludes our time together today. I appreciate each of you, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye, friends. We'll see y'all soon. Melissa, stay on for me, please, okay?
All righty.
I love the chat. See y'all later. Thank you so much.